When I put my presentation together, I'd like to imagine that Eminem had a message he wanted to share with the FCC directly. So, pardon if that offends anybody. I'm sorry, but that's meant for the FCC. Guys, in the compliance and rules and regulations world, and Lester just barely touched on this in his presentation, it has been a whirlwind over the past 6 to 8 months of changes that we all have to adhere to moving forward. And the tough part, and I'm going to go through this, the tough part is we have to really wait for the insurance carriers to provide their clarification to the rules. It's a big process, so we're going to get it right into it, though. So first of all, if you're not sure who the FCC and CMS is, maybe you've been living under a rock for the past 50 years. Here's some simple definitions. The FCC is the Federal Communications Commission. They regulate all the communication here in the United States, radio, cable TV, internet, all of it. CMS stands for Crazy Monster Silly People. Sorry, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. They regulate everything Medicare related. Here's an interesting point I want to bring up too that has come up many times. And I was actually last AEP, leading up to AEP, I got to sit down with a $1 billion FMO, and they wanted to talk to me about marketing going into AEP, see how we could potentially work together. And this conversation came up when we were talking about rules and regulations and potentially some of the future rules and regulations that were coming. And when it comes to communicating with seniors, you know, who has the final say? When it comes to rules being created, rules being implemented, and what they told me at the time was that the FCC would really be the ones that have the final say. But the reality is, here we are now 8 months later from when I was speaking to them, CMS actually has the ability to regulate everything regarding Medicare, including communications to the beneficiary. There is actually legal precedent in the Social Security Act that allows them to do this. I don't have the exact part of the Social Security Act to show you, but that was something crazy to me. And just to see how much confusion and how convoluted it's been. So if you're wondering, you know, do I need to adhere to the FCC rules or to the CMS rules? First and foremost, look at what the CMS rules are. And then if there's anything beyond that, you can look at the FCC rules. These are the actual documents of CMS on the bottom there. That's the final rule for 2024. That's what came out April 4th of this year, so just 8 weeks ago. And the FCC, their new rules, that came out in December of 2023. So if you want the actual documents, I wanted to include this for you guys. That the final rule is over 1,300 pages long. I don't know who's actually going to sit down and read all that, but if you guys want to, by all means. Tony, it looks like Tony has something he wants to read tonight. So Tony, you might want to make sure you scan that. The other disclaimer I wanted to give you guys, I am not an attorney. I like to pretend to be one sometimes. But if you have questions or clarifications on anything in these documents, I highly recommend talking to an attorney. They are the ones that can give you true legal advice. I am not here to give you legal advice today. I'm here to just share, to the best of my knowledge, how these rules are going to affect marketing and communications going into this year and future years. So let's start with the FCC rule changes. So the big one here is one-to-one consent. You know, we already heard from stage today, you know, who's heard from one of their clients that they're getting inundated with phone calls, right? It's a problem. It's a problem. And as someone who contributes to that problem personally, as an owner of a call center, I can tell you, and also as an agent too, I've sat in the house, I've watched Mrs. Jones go up to the phone. I'll never forget this. I'm literally sitting down on the couch, right? And I'm presenting some options to Mrs. Jones. She goes up to her phone and she's literally just pulling it off the receiver like this and just hanging up over and over and over on people. She's like, they're just calling me every day. And so I've seen it firsthand. I've seen it from all sides. It's tough because we all know this is a problem. We all want the problem to be solved, but at the same time, I don't think any of us want, government overreach or to get over-regulated, right? Do you want to get to the point where it's a struggle to communicate with your own clients just based on the rules? That's bad for everybody at that point. So with these FCC rule changes that came out in December of last year, you have to be topically relevant with all opt-ins that you're receiving. Right now, today, you can take a lead from a mortgage company and you can call that person and ask them about final expense, Medicare supplement. It doesn't have to be topically relevant to have communication with someone. And it also doesn't have to be one-to-one consent. Lead brokers will sell to hundreds of different agents, right? Over and over and over, and then you're the 50th person to call them. So these are big rule changes that are going to change the game for everybody. And understandably, they are trying to solve for that problem that we all just raised our hand, right? That our clients are getting inundated with phone calls. They're trying to make it so when they do get phone calls, it's relevant to them, that they opted in, that they know who they're speaking to, that the seller of the services is the person on the other side of that one-to-one consent. So again, something that if you weren't aware of, you need to make sure you're aware of. Now the CMS final rule, I wanted to go into some highlights. Again, 1,300-page document. We're still waiting for insurance carriers to offer clarifications. This is going to be an ongoing evolution of rule changes as we see every year. Overrides, HRAs, additional funds being paid to the writing agent. We're going to be seeing that going away, capping the amount of money per category that can be spent for an agent, such as overrides, technology, quoting software, etc. Marketing money. Is that completely going away? Is it going to look differently? Again, still to be determined. The definition of a TPMO, which I can tell you right now, if you're sitting in this room, you're probably a TPMO. We're pretty much all TPMOs, third-party marketing organizations. So they made it very clear who is a TPMO, and then limiting data sharing between TPMOs. So even if you have a wholly owned subsidiary, again, such as Christian Brindle Insurance Services, CBIS, they are the Lead Heroes is now technically a wholly owned subsidiary of CBIS. That is not a loophole. We still cannot pass data between a wholly owned company to the agency without consent. That's how specific these rules are. I'm sure there's a lot of really big companies that were disappointed by that with all the acquisitions going on. Maybe they were hoping they could get around it that way, but even a wholly owned subsidiary is going to have to play by these rules. So I want to show you guys a quick video here from Christian and I at the time of this video, and please don't mind, I popped a peppermint candy in my mouth for some reason right before we were recording right here, so please don't mind my ridiculousness, but I wanted to show you guys a moment from our live stream talking about the final rule.
For the majority of you, you probably fall under one of these two entities. Even if you don't know it, probably do. So the likelihood of that being a thing for you is probably very small. But like you asked about contracts, right? There's a couple different scenarios I would say. If let's say that did happen, they could release you on the way out as like a courtesy. They could not, and you self-release. Or maybe the carriers do some kind of exception, like a SEP of contracts or something they've never done in the history of contracts before. I don't know. But you can always move with or without release.
Well, so we're getting some live information from the audience here. I'm going to spot check this right now. It sounds like finalizes rule expanding access to care. Yeah, I don't think.
Did you open it?
Contract year 2025 Medicare Advantage and Part D final rule. Is this it?
Yep.
This is it. Is this it? Did we just get this live? Did it
Try
just
to open it. Hang on, guys.
Did they hang on, did CMS see us go live? Why did it go? We said this was pre-final. The final rule appears to have just dropped, you guys. If you're watching this live right now, if you're with us, we've been speculating about final rule. The final rule has just dropped minutes
There we
ago.
go. It's a,
I'm nervous. I'm nervous.
1,327 pages.
I couldn't let Christian be. It's a virus. No, it's really good.
All right.
CMS.gov.
Nice.
How do we do this? You want to screen share?
Yeah, let's screen share. Yeah, they couldn't let me beat them.
They're like, don't. How nervous are you right now? I'm nervous.
My heart's a little fast. I can't believe it. I can't believe it dropped.
It dropped. I feel like we created this. I don't know. We were told tomorrow. It got dropped today.
Yeah, I was told tomorrow by very credible sources. Can you see my screen?
I can.
Here it is. So how do you eat an elephant? This is 1,300 pages, you guys. Thank you.
So I wanted to include that in my presentation today so I could officially tell everyone we were the first Medicare agents in the entire industry to go live and talk to you guys about the final rule and try to make some sense of this massive rule change, this 1,300-page document. If you're not, again, I mentioned this in the introduction this morning, but if you're not already in the 7-Figure Agent Medicare Facebook group, please get in there so you can catch all the updates live as we're getting them. Christian and I have really made it a mission of ours to try to provide this information in a format that you can really synthesize it, understand it, and include it and implement it in your business moving forward as quickly as we can. So that's the QR code for the Facebook group. Also, Christian's YouTube channel, which we always try to keep the live streams on as well. If you're not a subscriber on there, please subscribe. It's a great picture of you, Christian. My heart's beating a little fast. So what are the implications of all these rule changes? How is this going to affect all of you? How is this going to affect AEP this year? Buying aged leads or shared leads is now dead. For some of you, that might be a celebration. For some of you, that might be a death sentence to how you're currently marketing, right? This has been essentially the gold standard of lead generation for years now. Buying aged opt-in data where you can compliantly outreach and market, that has been essentially the quote-unquote loophole. That's what the FCC wanted to shut down, and that's exactly what they did. Moving forward, marketing will have to be more of a done-for-you type service, or you're going to have to learn how to do it yourself. And finally, again, that clear buying path, right, which CMS has already been kind of kicking this can down the road, talking about that opt-in all the way to the close, the actual policy being written, being able to see that transparently. Again, the FCC essentially copied that exact type of language. They want to see from the time that person opts in to the time the service or product gets sold, that they can see that and know that it was compliant from start to finish. So is this the end, right? Is this the end of Lead Heroes? Like I mentioned, you know, the gold standard of marketing has really been shared data, aged opt-in leads. You know, if you've ever had an existential crisis before, you know, this was a big one for me. I actually bought a house last year, end of October, and then 6 weeks later, the FCC came out and updated their rules, essentially making our internal marketing practices obsolete in a 4-to-1 vote. 5 unelected government officials got together and voted on these rules, and in a 4-to-1 landslide victory for the new FCC rules, completely obliterated how we currently are doing our marketing from a compliance standpoint. The good news is they gave 12 months to implement it. However, like I talked about earlier, CMS wants it to start October 1st, not January 27th, which is what the FCC rules state. So we actually, as Medicare agents, we have to start these rules even sooner than what the FCC states for the rules to start. So this was, again, a big moment for me personally, for the company, trying to figure out, understand these rules. How can we adapt? How can we overcome? Or maybe we can't. Maybe it's time to move on, do something different. Going through from kind of the start of the company to where it is now, you know, it's always been an ongoing evolution from the time I hired our first caller at Lead Heroes back in 2015. And initially, again, as proof of concept, it was essentially just hiring one caller, one dialer seat for that one caller, and at the time, focusing on final expense and Medicare supplement, literally cold calling and just scrubbing against the do not call list. That moved on to utilizing aged and shared data, like I mentioned, which is now, again, the question mark. What's next? How do you provide marketing for insurance agents with one-to-one consent when I'm collecting that consent and then you're ultimately the final seller, right? It poses a big problem. Starting October 1st or sooner, we will be working on implementing opt-in consent, becoming the original publisher for every lead that we call. That's the only way that we will be able to move forward. We can't work with any shared data or any of our data broker partners, list aggregators. It has to come from us now internally. So that is going to be the future. That is Lead Heroes' future. For all of my haters who are hoping that it was actually the end of Lead Heroes, I'm so sorry. That is not happening yet. I'm like a cockroach after a nuclear bomb goes off. It is so hard to kill me. And with the FCC rules and getting express written consent with every opt-in, I wanted to include, this is language that shows exactly what you have to include on all of your landing pages moving forward. Feel free to take a picture of this if you'd like. You will get a copy of all of my slides after the summit's over. So I apologize if this is a little hard to see. And I'm going to go through some of these different points that you have to have on there. One of the key changes that they made is you cannot have any boxes pre-selected. The consumer has to check that box. That is that's them showing consent when they opt in. They have to see the phone number. I'll jump to the next slide here. So disclosure must reference language on the button. Again, I'm not going to go through all of this, but this kind of shows all the things that are necessary. And that was really, this is just like a boiler template. That's another thing I wanted to mention here. And another plug for contacting your attorney, or if you don't have an attorney, maybe you should get one. There is language in here that you might not have to include because it might not be relevant to you and your business. As an example, number 13 here, it mentions pre-recorded or artificial voice messages. If you are not using pre-recorded messages in your marketing or artificial intelligence to help you with your marketing, you don't need to include that in your opt-in form. So this might look long. This might be concerning if you're marketing right now and you're using something much shorter for your opt-in consent. You might be able to tweak this and still be compliant. Again, talk to an attorney. They can help you out if you're confused or concerned. But this is a nice boiler template where if you do include all this language, you know you're going to be compliant. You can start grabbing that one-to-one consent opt-ins, and you can run with it. Another thing I'll mention too while I have this up, if you see number 14 here where there's 4 different companies listed, which you're like, Glenn, that's not one-to-one consent, that's 1-to-4 consent. The FCC clarified and came out and said, we're not going to regulate how many boxes you want to put on your opt-in form. If you want to have 250 companies listed on your opt-in form and you want the consumer to go through and click them all, you can have 250 companies listed on your opt-in form. You can also have a select all button, which is number 11. So again, it can't be pre-selected, and the select all can't be over the top. It has to just be listed right there kind of on the side. But a couple of tricks if you are trying to market for, maybe you have multiple agencies in your downline and you're trying to help them market. This gives you the ability to do that. So how will this all work moving forward? How can Lead Heroes continue to market for insurance agents, capture one-to-one consent on your behalf, and provide a compliant process all the way through? So I'm going to give you kind of the roadmap, and it's in process. You guys remember that video of Christian's heart beating fast and us going through the FCC, or excuse me, the CMS final rule live as it dropped. That was just 8 weeks ago. So, again, this is all happening very much so in real time. We're getting the updates from the government on the rules. We are trying to learn, understand them. We're consulting with our attorneys. We are implementing these tests, seeing what works, what doesn't work, and we're building this out. So first and foremost is digital marketing platforms, right? There are a ton of different digital marketing platforms that you can work with to capture consent, right? Where you can find seniors who need help, where they might click on an ad, get to your form. At Lead Heroes, we have done an incredible amount of digital marketing towards insurance agents. Many of you have probably seen internet ads from Lead Heroes or Hire Heroes, or it could be from Christian Brindle's Facebook page. We've done a lot of paid ads. So the good news is we're not starting from scratch. We have infrastructure. We have team members in place who are experts at this. This is less about starting over, and this is really more about retooling the resources that we already have on hand. So that's something that I'm excited about. Something that's coming out today, you guys. I'm just going to spend a minute talking about this, but this is the 7-figure CRM. This is something that Christian and I have been working on since January when we merged all of our companies together. And I honestly, of all the things that I'm talking about, this is potentially one of the most exciting things that we're planning on rolling out and having all of you guys get access to. This is going to allow us to really optimize that digital marketing. So once someone opts in and it comes into the CRM, Christian in his talk, he kept talking about touch points. He said touch points are going to be the key moving forward. He's talking about retention, right? Touch points are also key when it comes to lead conversion. How many of you have seen those stats about follow-up, right? It takes, 5 to 10 contact attempts to close a lead, right? That's just going to keep going up potentially. So making sure that you have a system in place, whether you're using our system, the 7-figure CRM, or whether you're using a different CRM system, those touch points will remain a very, very, very important part of your sales process moving forward. So feel free, if you want to check that out now, you can. We will get into that more later today. And then the Lead Heroes call center. So again, as we're kind of moving down this path, this road, going from that original ad where we get that one-to-one opt-in consent, now it's going from there into the CRM. And then from there, someone from the Lead Heroes team can actually make that call and qualify them and either qualify the lead, set the appointment, transfer to the agent. Again, coming back to the one-to-one consent, how does that work if the one-to-one consent in the ad, right? If the language on the opt-in form says Lead Heroes or a Lead Heroes DBA, doing business as, how would that work if you're a completely different legal entity from us? I'm going to show you one of my favorite parts of what CMS included in the final rule. The phone consent exception. The TPMO can transfer the beneficiary to another TPMO, such as an agent or broker, during the call for assistance. This is acceptable without prior express written consent if the beneficiary verbally agrees during the call. CMS had to include this. The same way the 48-hour rule got an exception for inbound calls, it would be a disservice to Medicare beneficiaries everywhere if you weren't able to get a call from someone, even if they didn't have written consent with you. This will allow us to get consent on your behalf on that phone call, and then you're able to continue on in the sales process. Again, cockroach after the nuclear bomb. There's a picture of our team. We have over 250 employees right now, just based out of the Philippines, on top of our team here in the US. So I have a quote I wanted to leave you guys with. Change is inevitable. Growth is optional. I think what we've seen recently, this isn't the end of rule changes, compliance updates. What we'll see moving forward is probably more of the same, right? It seems like every year CMS has new rules that they're rolling out. They're trying to tighten the screws. They're trying to get rid of bad actors. You have to be ready for that change because it's coming no matter what. No matter what we do, that change is constant. The growth is optional. Again, shout out to Lester. He really hit this point home. There is going to be so much opportunity this AEP and moving forward because there will be a lot of Medicare agents who decide they don't want to deal with the change. You're probably going to see an increase in agency owners and Medicare agents who are getting out of the business. You're going to see books of business probably going for sale because they don't want to even service their clients anymore. So capitalizing on this opportunity, instead of looking at this like, oh man, CMS and the FCC, they're getting together to try to shut my business down. I think it's honestly the opposite. I think you should look at it as there is now going to be more opportunity as a Medicare agent than there has ever been. This AEP can potentially be everyone here. You can have the biggest AEP you've ever had. I guarantee it. If you really focus and you have the systems in place and you get your compliance checked out, make sure you're doing everything right, instead of having optional growth, you can have huge growth. For more information about Lead Heroes or any updates that we have coming up, you guys, that is a link to our website. I appreciate everyone's time. Thank you so much.